All right, trombone fans, how are we doing? Checking in to see how these videos are helping you. If there are any things in particular that you've been struggling with, if you've been practicing this week, I just want to take a moment to encourage you. That's very normal to have a hard time or something that's tripping you up. And it's very normal for that to change over time. But just want to say these videos are here to help you. So if you could go back and watch something, or maybe ask your band director to see if there's a different way that they can explain something to you. This is, like we've talked about before, a journey, and it's hard, and there are things to work on, and that's okay. So as we do that, leads really well into the thing we're going to talk about today, which is our scales. Scales are something most people despise about playing instruments. It's really monotonous to sit down and learn all of the different key signatures and the different slide positions for us that correlate with those. It can get really tricky and muddy, at least in my head. But I want to take a minute today to let you know that it's really important to work on scales. So we'll start with some basics, and then I want to give you some examples of some things of how scales help us as we go through. So I won't sit here and walk you through all of the different key signatures and how the different slide positions work. There's normally a really helpful chart in the back of maybe your Essential Elements book, or even if you have to Google it, I'm sure there's a solid sheet of all the different scales that trombonists have to play, or if you are practicing for maybe an all region or all state, some kind of competition where you have an audition, you can start practicing these scales now, because it's only going to help you. So if you take a look at this long sheet, it can be a little intimidating, but I want you to think first that you know all of these notes already. So we just have to kind of get it in our brain of which slide positions go with different key signatures and scales, and just be able to kind of keep track of where you are and come up with a system that works for you. So there was a time in my life where playing through the scales in the order that they were given to me was helpful. And so I played, I think it goes around the circle of fifths. And so I played B flat, and then E flat, and A flat, and kind of went down that way. But later on in my life, it was easier for me to remember if I went in chromatic order. So I would start with my lowest scale, my F scale, and I would build up to G flat, and then G, and so forth, and so on. So I encourage you to try out playing it in different orders and different ways. Most audition committees don't care about the way that you play them. They just want to make sure you know the notes and know how they work together. Another thing that's helpful is that you don't have to play them in any particular rhythm. And so it can be really helpful. Some people play them all as quarter notes. Some people do the classic bum, 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 bum. Different things like that. Or maybe if you emphasize different notes, that might help you remember. So again, it's all an experiment to see what clicks for your brain. And all of our brains are different. So once you find something that works for you, really dig in and start to work through all the different scales. Another thing that's really helpful for me, when I started, I was just trying to memorize the slide positions. And so I wanted to make sure I knew that B flat starts with first position, and then sixth position, fourth, third, first, fourth, second, first. And yet then when I would take that information and try to translate it into a piece of music, I wasn't making the connection that whenever I'm playing something in the key of B flat, like our etude, for example, that all of my E's would be flat and would be in third position, and all of my A's would be natural, so they'd be in second position. So I want to encourage you, especially as you're learning the scales, to have that sheet in front of you so you can see the note and you're not just memorizing things together in a numerical sequence. So scales there really is no better way to learn them besides just playing through. So again, find a way that works for you. Be able to experiment with different rhythms, or even sometimes looking at different things. If you look at a blank music stand, for example, or if you can look right into the eyes of your parents or something like that, be able to try different things out to see what might help you. And of course, another part of all of our scales that correlate with different key signatures is our chromatic scale. And parts of this are really easy with the trombone, since we know our chromatics just go right up in the different slide positions. But it also can be a little tricky, and for me, I could get really muddy between my different notes. So I want to take a minute to encourage you to take time on your chromatic scale as well. Think about the name of the note, or names. For example, we know that there are different ones that can be called different things, right? So a G flat is the same as an F sharp. Think about those notes so that it can translate to your pieces of music later. There are reasons that we work on scales. There are reasons that we work on our posture and our breathing, because it all comes together in pieces of music. So I'll take a minute here for you to look through and kind of figure out the ways that you might be able to try out your scales. Think about if you should play them just in the order that they happen. Maybe if you start at the top with the highest note and go down and come back up, that might be helpful for you. Maybe a different rhythm. If you think more about the rhythm, you might be less focused on trying to remember each exact note and how they come together. I also want to take a minute to encourage you to know how the key signatures work, right? So with flats, it's pretty easy. And whenever you have two flats or more, you look at the second to last one is the key that you're in. Right, so we know a B flat has two flats, B flat and E flat. So for example, A flat is going to have four flats. We got our B, E, A, D, and it's going to be named after that second to last one. So these things are helpful to be able to kind of connect all of the pieces, why we're learning our scales and how that might help us in the future. There's some pieces that are in some pretty strange key signatures, but if we know how they work and we can kind of figure out how they feel in our body as we play scales, it'll help us kind of imagine how these things go together. So as part of talking about scales, again, just encourage you to take time to learn them and to be able to say the note names in your head and see how they come together. I want to show you part of why we learned these. So I brought with me two pieces today that I have played in various points in my trombone career that really emphasize for me what's helpful in learning our scales. So for example, this piece is called Laurie. It's a pretty classic trombone piece that I learned how to play in college. And there's a whole section, the finale here. I know it looks like a lot of notes, but we can start the same way we went through our etude. We can check out to see our key signature. So if we have three flats, what does that mean for us? We have B, E, A. So this is key of E flat. And we can think automatically play through your E flat scale. So we got E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat, right? You can feel it. You can start to see how the slide positions and the notes work together. And then as we look through here, so we got our 4/4 time signature, which is one we know how to do. But you can see that these different runs of notes that are connected Most of them are just downward going scales. Look at that. Sometimes they might have a little accidental thrown in there, but overall those are scales that we know. And so when you're starting to play through and practice this piece, I would be practicing my E flat scale, going down, start at the top and going down. And that way it's built into my muscle memory so that I can know exactly how this feels and maybe spend more of my time on some of the other complicated parts. The notes aren't as close together, or some of the rhythms that might be trickier. So Annie Laurie is a piece there it's really helpful to be reminded of using our scales. There's another one that I really loved, have played for a long time, called Marceaux Symphony. It's a very classic trombone piece. And there are sections in here, especially in the faster sections, the allegros. Now, once again, we can take a look here. All right, so we have 3 flats again, which means that we are in the key of E flat. And we have, this is in 3/4 time. And when the notes actually start for the trombone, look at that. It's our scale for E flat. So we got E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. You can think through these notes and see how they work together. And then it's less complicated. We won't be thrown off if we have something like this a few measures later. So first one here is the key of E flat. But look at these notes and the way they come together here. That is our B flat scale. So you could play our B flat scale, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. And you can just run through it, so these pieces are part of your memory and you don't have to worry about each individual note. You can see how they work together. This continues even further in that same section. We got here number 3. This one has sharps, which is a little different for us, but that's the key of D. So we have a D, E, F sharp, G, A, B natural, got to remember that one, C sharp, and a D. So we can play through that scale and we can feel it in our body and have less to worry about. And we have one more in this piece. Here is our F scale. So as we go through, we're learning our scales. They're for really important reasons. It'll give us an idea of how to play pieces, how things work together. And we can let our bodies take over sometimes, that we can remember. So encourage you to take your time on your chromatic scale. Don't take it for granted that we just move up with our different positions. And learn your scales in ways that are helpful for you. So try out different patterns, different orders, different ways that you can really internalize what these scales mean and not just see it as another chore in music. I promise they're helpful. These pieces are really good examples of that, and I know that you can do it. All right, thanks for joining today. Feel free to look back at your etude and the other fundamentals so we can keep moving forward.